Hello makers and welcome back to the channel. Before we go any further, big thumbs up and be sure to subscribe if you haven't. So today's tutorial is this crop distressed cardigan, which has been on my mind for a very long time, and it's about time we got it done. There is a free written pattern available, so check that in the description box below. Also, there will be a link to the paid version. All the materials needed are listed below with their affiliate links, so we do make a little commission when you purchase. Be sure to do that as it helps keep the lights on. So now let's get right into the tutorial. So to begin working on our crop cardigan, grab that 4.5mm hook and your DK weight yarn, and you're gonna make a slip knot just like that. So I'm making a size small, so if you're doing a size small, then you can follow exactly what I'm doing in this tutorial. But if you do require a larger size or a smaller size, you want to refer to that written pattern, so be sure you're working hand in hand with the written pattern. So for the size small, we're going to do a chain of 45. So go ahead and make your chain of 45 and I will meet you once you are done. And so I've just finished making my chain of 45 and I have placed a stitch marker into the 15th chain from the bottom, so be sure to do that. And now we can get started on the row. So to begin, you want to block off that first chain that we made and last chain and make a chain of 1. So we're going to be working into the back little humps of our chain, so you might want to tip your work like this. And we are going to begin by making an increase. So we're not going to work into the first chain, but rather the second chain. So you want to find the back little loop at the back, and we're going to be making our very first increase of a half double slip stitch. So just like that. To do a half double slip stitch, in case you missed that, you just turn over, and I am going back into that very first chain. Insert your hook, loop up the yarn, just turn your hook upside down and you slip stitch through like that. Let's do that again together. Insert, loop, pull it through. I like to turn my hook upside down and slip stitch just like that. If that's a little hard for you, you can just hold that middle chain down and pull through like that. I'll show you that again. You're just gonna hold that middle chain down and slip stitch like that. So you're gonna see what works best for you and you will continue to do that. So I'm gonna go on placing my half double slip stitches into the back bumps until I reach that stitch marker. So you want to do the very same thing. Keep placing your half double slip stitches and I'll meet you once we reach this stitch marker right there. So I have just reached my stitch marker, so to work into that I'm gonna have to remove that, and for the last 15 stitches that we have left we will be doing slip stitches. So into the back loop still, I'm just gonna pull through and pull through, pull through and pull through, just like that. So you go on doing this all the way into the last, and then we will begin the other row together. Now I've got one more stitch to work into. And this is what our very first row should be looking like. So we'll be doing a chain up over and turning. And so to get this knit look, rib look, we're going to be working just into the back loops only. So into that first stitch, which is this one right here, we're going to begin with a decrease from this bottom side. So we'll be decreasing 8 rows and then increasing 8 rows just to give us this little, to get the distressed look. I mean, that's gonna make sense as we go. I know we left 15 stitches at the bottom, and we will still be working those 15 stitches, just that we'll be decreasing and increasing into 8 rows. So to do our first decrease, let me start together. We're gonna do a slip stitch into 2 stitches together. So you're going to slip stitch into right into there, pull through, and then right into there, and then you're going to pull through all 3 loops, and that's going to count as your 1 and 2. Well, I mean that's a total of 3 stitches, so that we can keep count. We should have left that stitch marker right in there, but it's okay, it's all gonna make sense. So we've done 2 stitches, but really that's a total of 3. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You don't want to make them too tight. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. This was where we put our first slip stitch. So from here on, be sure after you remove your stitch marker, you're going to place it right back in there. And then to continue with the rest of the row, into the back loop still, we're going back with our half double slip stitch rows. And I will meet you onto the last one so that we can do that increase together. And so I have reached my last stitch right there, so I'm gonna go in there with 2 half double slip stitches, just like that. Now we'll be doing a chain up of 2, and I'm doing a chain up of 2 because into the second chain that we made, that's where we'll be placing our first increase. So into the second chain that we made right in there, we'll be placing our first half double slip stitch, which will count as our first increase while we're going down on this row. So you will continue placing your half double slip stitches all the way until the stitch marker, where we will then switch to the slip stitches, and I will meet you once you're reaching the end so that I can show you how we increase once more, and then I can let you carry on for the 8 rows, for the 8 decrease rows. So you go on, half double slip stitching, remember to switch to a slip stitch here. After you remove your stitch marker and place your first slip stitch, be sure to put it back in there because you don't want to get confused. So it's time for our decrease, and to make that decrease, remember, we have to slip stitch 2 stitches together. So insert that hook into there, pull up a loop, and then into that last stitch, pull up a loop and slip stitch through both loops, and that's our decrease. To begin our next row, chain 1 and return our work. And then we'll also be doing another decrease because remember, we are decreasing 8 rows. So into those first 2 stitches, we'll be doing a decrease, just like that, and we'll continue to decrease. If you remember, don't remove your stitch marker. So we have done a total of 4 rows. We're on our 4th row, I believe. Right? How do you count? I know it's a little confusing. So for me, oh my goodness, why is this confusing? All right, makes sense. Our first row was coming downwards, remember? Our first row was coming downwards. I like to check from the little bumps. Once you turn your work out like this, you see this bump right here will indicate 2 rows. This is row 3, meaning that we are starting on row 4. If you have an easier way of counting the rows using this stitch, please leave that in the comment down below. So I'm going to continue doing this. This is row 4. And to row 8, then I'll meet you back. Remember to keep decreasing down here and increasing up here until the 8th row, and then I'll meet you, and the 8th row is for all sizes, and then I'll meet you at the end, at the 8th row. So I've just finished 8 rows and I got started on the 9th row, which is now, we're gonna now start doing increases where we were doing our decreases. So if you are on 8th row, be sure to finish that and get started on the 9th row. Pause the video and you can meet us here. So I'm just going to remove that stitch marker so we can go on with our slip stitch row. And put that slip stitch marker right back in there. And then we're going to go on placing our slip stitches. Just like that. But in the last one, which is this one right here, we are going to place 2 slip stitches to make our increase. And I've left that stitch marker to indicate that that was the 8th row, so that I can, in case I lose track, because we're going to do an increase of our other 8 rows. And then I'll chain 2 to increase, as we tend to do. And then into the second stitch from the hook, we're going to go in with our first slip stitch. And just like that, that's how we're going to be doing our increases when it comes to the band. And we're still going to be doing our increases at the top, remember that. And so for size small, we're going to do this for a total of 19 rows. So make sure you're playing around with the stitch markers at the bottom, because they're going to help keep reminding you where your 8 rows are. So after this is 8, we have 8 more rows to do, which is going to total about 16 rows at the bottom. I'm going to do a few more normal rows until I finish the 19 rows. So you go on, keep doing this for another 8 rows, and I'll meet you back once I am done to show you what I mean. So be sure that those 8 rows you are increasing at the bottom and also increasing at the top. So you should have a total of 16 rows once I meet you back. And so I finished doing the 8 rows of decreases. This ended up right here. And to finish off the remaining 19 rows for the size small, I was doing normal rows. So what we're going to do, we're going to alternate between 8 rows of decreasing, 8 rows of increasing, and then 8 rows of normal, and then back to decreasing, increases, normal. And that makes sense. So I increased for a total of 19 rows. That's for size small. And then from here on, I'm going to add on 10 normal rows. For the 10 normal rows, you're not increasing at the top anymore. All the increasing and decreasing is going to be happening at the bottom. So you go on and do what's required for your size, and then I'll meet you once I'm done with the front panel. Then we can get started onto the back panel. Alright, so I just finished working my 10 normal rows on this side, and this is what the bottom side is looking like. I have started to make some decreases up there. I'm on my 7th row, coming back down onto my 8th row, and then I should start getting on the increasing. So after you finished working your normal rows, you should end at the bottom of your work. You want to get started on your other row, but the different thing is, if you look, I have placed a stitch marker right here, and this is my 22nd stitch, counting from the top going downwards. And this is what you're going to do if you're doing a size small. So for the remaining parts, you're going to crochet up into that stitch marker. So let's do that together. And here we are. So once you reach the stitch marker, since we have 22 stitches up here, I am going to make a chain of 22. And that's 22. So now I'm going to block off that last chain and do a chain up of 1 to begin my work. And this is what your work should be looking like. So I'm just going to explain what we're going to do from here on. We're going to do a whole bunch of normal rows. So since for size small there is 29 rows in total for this front panel, we're now going to get started on the back panel. So to do the back panel, we're going to do 29 rows, 29 times 2, which is going to be 58 rows for size small, that is. So what you're going to do is normal rows at the top, and you're going to continue with the 8 rows of decrease, 8 rows of increase, and 8 normal rows for the bottom part. So you go on doing that, and I'll meet you once I'm done with my 58 rows. So you will see that after you finish your back row, doing just multiplying the number of the front row panels times 2, you're going to be ending at the top, and you're going to need to end at the bottom. So everybody, you're going to add one more row, making sure that it ends you at the bottom. So after you do that, just like we did on the other side, we're going to work our way back up, but we're going to leave the same number of chains that we left. Like in this case, we left 22. So we're going to leave 22 stitches up here and do a chain up of 23. And that's exactly what you're going to do this side, being sure to be working in the back bumps only, because we don't want to go around with that row of single crochet, because what we're doing now here is going to make it easier for us to connect the sleeves in. It's going to make a lot more sense when we get there. So after you do that, do the exact same number of normal rows, which is 10 for this case, and decrease 19 rows for the size small. After you've done that, you're just going to do a chain up of 1 and cut. And be sure, don't forget, the bottom is still comprising of the rows with increases, decreasing 8, increasing 8, and then 8 normal rows, just like that, so that we can form these little ridges. So pause the video, go on and do that. After you're done with that other side of the panel, you're just going to lay these together like that. If you notice, I've left stitch markers on the 10th, and the same on this side. And I'm also going to do the very same thing to the 10th, connect to the 10th, and then I am just going to seam those 10 together. You want to leave the decreased parts alone, and you're going to do the same thing for the other side. Grab your yarn needle, connect. So in this case, in the front panel, this was where my 10th stitch ended. So I'm just going to take my yarn needle and my yarn, and I will sew this part closed, just like that. If you've got any messy parts on your work like I do, I have these little yarns, there's yarn sticking up, so I want this to be on the inside. So I'm going to close my cardigan from this side. So do that, close your cardigan, sew the cardigan on the shoulder parts, and then we'll meet right back so that we can get started on the sleeves. So I've just finished connecting the shoulder parts. Now we're going to get started on the sleeves. Alright, to begin on the sleeve, you are just going to connect your yarn. With a slip stitch, just like that. And then you're going to find the very corner, the very, very ridge of your cardigan, which is the very center, which is this part for me, and you're just gonna slip stitch to join. Let's do that again, and slip stitch and join, just like that. So for the size small, to do the sleeve, we're gonna chain a chain of 65. So I'm gonna chain 65 off camera, and then I'll meet you once I've got that chain of 65, and then we can get started, and I'll show you how to begin and connect to the sleeve opening, and then I'll let you carry on yourself from there. So I'm just going to do a quick chain of 65. So here we are, I've just made that chain of 65. I'll be blocking off that last chain and adding a chain of 1 to begin the row. So make sure your stitch marker is close. And into the first 10, I'm just going to go in with slip stitches. I'm not doing any more of the distressed pattern on the sleeve, but if you wish, you can do that right now. Just repeat what we're doing for the bottom band of the cardigan to the sleeve. But I am not doing that anymore. So I'm just going to go in with 10 slip stitches. And just like that, grab my stitch marker, throw it in there, and then from here on, we're just gonna go on with half double slip stitches all the way until you reach until you've got one more stitch left, until you've got one more stitch left here, and I'll meet you there so that we can now connect together, and I'll let you finish off by yourself. So just a quick reminder before we go any further, remember to go into the back bumps of the chain. So now I've got one more stitch to work into the back bump of that. So pay attention. Once you reach the top, the opening of your arm, you're gonna find the next stitch, which is this one right here. As you can see, what you're doing is connecting the row that we just worked. To connect, you will just slip stitch, just like that. To begin a new row, you will slip stitch into the next stitch. And turn your work, back loops only. You will continue with a half double slip stitch all the way down. Once you reach the slip stitching part, you will slip stitch into the 10 and chain 1, turn your work, slip stitch into the 10 again, replace the stitch marker, and then back loop half double slip stitch all the way. So I'm just going to show you this one more time. I'm going to work my way down and up, and then I'll show you one more time how we connect to the opening, and then I'll let you finish off by yourself. So here I am, almost done with this row. So once more, we find the next available stitch or single crochet, slip stitch to join the row that we were just working. To begin a new row, instead of chaining one, we'll slip stitch into the next available single crochet or stitch, and then we'll continue with our half double slip stitch. So you're going to do that all the way around your arm opening until you make your way to this very last, this one right here, the very last single crochet or stitch. So you go and do that, and I'll meet you once you have completed your arm so that we can close it off together. So I've just finished both that sleeve I was talking about. You want to do the same thing for both sleeves, and I have finished both of mine. So pause the video, finish both your sleeves if you haven't already, and now we're about to finish off the cardigan with the color before we go off to add the little issues at the bottom. So before we begin the collar, we're gonna have to go around placing single crochets. It's easier to notice from this sides, these two sides, but then when it comes to the neck parts, we don't have perfect single crochet areas, and we want to make this as stressless as possible. So we're gonna go around placing row single crochet. So you want to just connect your yarn to your hook just like that, and we're gonna begin at one of the ends. So into that first stitch right there, I'm just gonna connect and do a chain like that, pull through just like that, do a chain up of 1, and then I'm just gonna go all around placing single crochets into every stitch area. So I'm gonna go on doing this, placing single crochets all the way up. And when I reach this area, I'm going to meet you back so that I can show you how you can do it without much stress, because I know it's a little difficult to see this side. So I'll show you how to do it without much stress. So I've just reached the top of my work, and the last single crochet that I made on top of that will count for this row. So the next row is the in-between, this ridge area. So I'm just going to go right in there with my single crochet. And then the next is the braided part, the ribbed part. So I'm just gonna go on top of that with my single crochet. Since we're doing a chain of 1, we're just going to be placing 1 single crochet as well. The next area is the in-between part, 1 single crochet. The next is my ribbed area, and then in between ribbed area, and that's all you're gonna do, going all the way around in between the ribbed area, in between ribbed, just like that. And you're gonna do that placing single crochets, the same thing when you reach the neck area, and the same thing when you reach the other side. The same thing all the way here, the same thing all the way here. And I'll meet you once you reach here. Don't cut your yarn, because we're gonna start working the collar now from there. So I've just finished going all the way around my cardigan, placing my single crochets, and now we're about to get started on the row. we're just going to do a chain up of 1, and just as we've been working the ribbon off the sleeve with slip stitches, that's how we're going to be working this the collar, so that it can resemble this area of the cardigan. So just as we've been doing the slip stitches, that's what you're going to do from here on. Into the back loops only, find the first stitch. This is the first one right here. Back loop only, place your single crochet, slip stitch, sorry. And slip stitch all the way around. Once you reach the other side, you're just going to do a chain up of 1 and slip stitch again. So I'm thinking I might do a total of 6 rows or 10, let's just say 10 rows. So once I do 5 rows, I'll come back to show you, so that I can show you how you create the buttonholes on your sides. So I'm gonna go off camera, relax somewhere, and do my 5 rows of slip stitches. That's if you want 10 rows. If I don't do 5 rows, I might do maybe 6, so I might come back after 3 rows, depending on how thick I want my collar to be. So you go on placing your rows of slip stitches for however many rows you want, and I'll meet you right back. And I'll make sure when I'm meeting you right back, you are right here, depending on where you want your buttonholes to be. I like making mine on this side, the left side, so I'll make sure I'm on the side that I started, which is my left side. So here we are. I know I said I was supposed to end on this side, but I don't. I lost count, I lost myself, and I ended up here, which really doesn't matter. So if you can see, I've left these 3 stitch markers, and this is locating where I want my buttonholes to be, and from these buttonholes we're going to place corresponding buttons on the other side. So I'm just going to walk you through how we create those buttonholes. So I will go on placing my slip stitches as usual. Sorry, this is what happens when you're working with 2 strands of yarn. So as I'm working up towards that stitch marker, I've got 2 spots left before the stitch marker. So I'm going to go on until I have 1 more stitch left before the stitch marker, and I'll do a chain up of 3. So in this stitch right here is where the stitch marker is. So I've got 1, 2, 3. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a chain of 3. And then I'll skip those 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, and into this 4th, I will go on with the slip stitches. Just like that. And I will do the same thing working upwards. So if you see, we've now got our first buttonhole. So I'll do the very same thing going upwards towards my next stitch marker, and I'll show you how we create the hole yet again. And this is how I tend to do to create my buttonholes for all my cardigans or whatever requires a buttonhole. So remember, 1 more stitch before the stitch marker, chain 3, skip 3, 1, 2, 3 into the 4th, slip stitch. Continue with your slip stitches. So I want mine to have 3 buttons, and that's what I'm going to do. And off working towards that last stitch marker, and then I'll let you guys continue from there. Ooh, 1 more stitch, chain 3, skip 3, 1, 2, 3 into the 4th, slip stitch. And so that's about it. We've created our buttonholes just like that, and I'm gonna continue. Since I did about 6 rows, I'm gonna work another 6 rows. So like my collar is gonna be comprised of a total of 12 slip stitch rows. So you go on and do that, and I'll meet you once I am done. So when you're working back downwards, you're just gonna work on top of those chains, placing your slip stitches, and that's about it. Once you're done, on the corresponding sides, we will be placing our buttons. I think I've lost my buttons. I might just have 1. So I might just show you how to place 1 if I can find it, and then I'll probably place the rest off camera. So you go on, finish off that, and I will finish as well off camera. So I've already gotten started on the little distressed ruffle stuff at the bottom. and I've left a few rows to just show you how I'm getting that done. So first of all, you're gonna grab your yarn, and I was using 2 fingers just like this, and I was just wrapping my yarn around my fingers just like that until I had just enough. After you have just enough, you're gonna cut the yarn off just around there, and then you're gonna cut the whole yarn off at the center, which is gonna give you these. Now this is what we're gonna use to create the little distressed look at the bottom. So I'm taking 3 to 4 strands of yarn to create the distressed look at the bottom, and then I'm folding them into half just like that, and I'm distancing about 1 to 2 rows between grabbing the ruffles and just, you know, slip stitching them through just like that. The next place I would do is right here. I am gonna grab 3 strands of yarn, fold them into half just like that, grab the hook, pull through, and then atlas stitch them through like that and just create a knot. And then into there, I'm gonna grab 3 strands of yarn and just repeat the process just like that. And right here, since I already have 3 more strands of yarn left, I will just finish off my row. And you're gonna do this all the way around your cardigan, as I have for mine. And we're about to cut them just to make them look neater, or yeah, neater, even though it's a messy kind of look. So now I've decided I want my ruffles to be just about this size, quite short. So I'm just gonna cut the yarns off like that. You can choose whatever size you want yours to be. If you want them to be a bit longer, you can make them a bit longer. But as for me, this size is long enough for me. So I'm gonna go around cutting them around this size, all the way around, and I'll meet you once I'm done. So I found my buttons, and I've connected two. I'm about to show you how we connect. So you wanna make sure you lay your buttonhole on top of the other side, laying them evenly so that you can know where you want to place the button, just like I did. So in this case, I'm gonna locate where my buttonhole is and just bring it on top of the other collar, the other side, and that's where I'm gonna place the button. So you wanna go from underneath with your yarn. I'm not using a yarn needle, I'm just using a proper needle, sewing needle, because the buttonholes are a bit small for the yarn needles which have a thick head. So I'm gonna go in from the bottom into one eye of the button, pull through, and then I'm gonna go into the opposite side of that button, so pull through, and then I'm gonna go in through the other eye of the needle. Ooh. There we go. Pull through, and then the other side of the needle of the button, and pull through. If you want a tighter hold, you can just repeat what we did. As for me, I'm just gonna stop here, cut the yarn, since this will be coming apart sometime soon anyway. And right about now, I would say my work is done. Now just have to weave in these little funny ends, cut off the yarn, weave in the ends, the parts that are sticking out. As for me, I'm just gonna grab my hook and pull those through. Pull the parts that are sticking out, just pull that through like that. And would you look at that? Our crop cardigan, distressed cardigan, is all finished. I am in love with this. I cannot wait to try it on. It's gonna be a new favorite. If you like this, guys, please give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, share it to those who you believe would love it as well, and you know, subscribe to my newsletter on the website as well so you don't miss out on future uploads, and stick around. I can't wait to see you in my next Valentine tutorial. See you next time. Happy crocheting.